Happy Friday. It's common knowledge time, which means it's time to take a look at 10, let's say 10. 10 common Magic the Gathering cards, and I'll tell you whether they are any good in the Pauper format or not. We'll start with Gangrenous Zombies. Fantastic name. Pretty good art. Let's see what it does. 1 in double black for a 2/2 zombie. You can tap and sacrifice this creature, and this creature deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. If you control a snow swamp, this creature deals 2 damage to each creature and each player instead. That's kind of interesting. So let's take a look at another card that is relatively similar. And Crypt Rats. Crypt Rats sees a lot of play in sideboards and sometimes even main boards of mono black decks and Ortsov Blade decks sometimes. I had it in mine. I ended up taking it out. Maybe I should put it back in because it is pretty good. But Crypt Rats is nice in that it has this modality of being able to deal more damage based on the number of black mana that you put on the amount of black mana that you put into it. So this is a little bit better most of the time. But this doesn't require me to play any more mana whatsoever. I just get a 3 mana 2/2, so it costs about the same as a Crypt Rats. And now that it's on the board, if I'm playing Snow Swamps, and that's very easy to do, you can certainly play Snow Swamps even in like just a mono black deck. Sure, I'll play all black swamps, or all Snow Swamps, I mean. And so now you can sack this guy, and even if you don't have the Snowlands, which you again almost assuredly will if you play all Snow Swamps, but even just a guy that sacrifices himself and deals a damage to each creature and each player, that's pretty good, right? I mean, that's like a pestilence thing on a body. I could potentially do 2. Like that's, I don't mind this. I think Crypt Rats just ends up taking it because it is a little bit more flexible. But you can make an argument there are some times where you would rather have Gangrenous Zombies than this. Huh. 13 cents for the Ice Age copy. I don't know. Kind of like it. I'll give this thing I'm going to give a 3.8. I'm kind of charmed by it. I think I might even want to grab a copy myself. Pretty cool. Certainly could go in a sideboard. Mindless Null, 2 and a black for a 2/2 zombie. This creature can't block unless you control a vampire. Well, that's a lot worse. In fact, this is incredibly bad. Let me show you a classic Magic card. Scathe Zombies. When I say classic, I mean this is 10th edition, but we can go back. We can go back all the way back to Alpha here. You can just get yourself 2 and a black for a 2/2 zombie. You can just do that. You don't have to pay 3 mana to get a 2/2 zombie that can't block unless you control another creature type. This sucks. Like, when Scathe Zombies is better than you, buddy, it's time to hang it up. This is, I'm going to give this a 1. Scathe Zombies is a bad card. Like, famously bad card. And you're a card that's worse than Scathe Zombies and came out, I don't know when Zendikar came out exactly, but let's just give a rough guess and say like 20 years after Scathe Zombies come out to make a worse Scathe Zombies? Get out of here. 1. No point. No point anything. Just 1 bad card. Speaking of bad cards, Rhystic Study. Boo. If we are going to look at Rhystic Study, we're going to look at the original. Rhystic Study. 2 and a blue. Have we done Rhystic Study before? We've talked about Rhystic Study because I've talked about the most expensive cards in Pauper. Yeah, but I don't think we've actually gotten it on the channel. I should be more excited for this one. It's Ristic Study. Yeah. Anyway, Ristic Study is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. So hey, you know what this is for. This is for Commander. We see it. It's a game changer. It's very good in that format. Probably should ban it out of the format to just make things fun for everybody else. But it's there. But it was common when it first came out in Prophecy, because here's the I mean, it's not even a secret. It's a very open secret at this point. This is not a very good card in 1v1 Magic. Your opponent can play around this pretty darn easily. The reason it's so good in Commander is that you have multiple players playing multiple spells, and they're going to be greedy, so they're not going to pay the 1, and then you get to draw a bunch of cards. And when you get to do that for 3 other players, you draw a ton of cards. In 1v1 Magic, when your opponent knows that everything they give you is something that's against them, most of the time they're going to pay the 1 so you don't get the extra value. And then you paid 3 mana for kind of nothing. I guess you're taxing them a little bit, but you're kind of doing nothing. But also the payoff is much worse, because you get 1 card. Okay, you got 1 card, and they got to play their really good spell. The balance is off. The balance is on. Really, it's a good balance in 1v1 Magic that makes this card fair and not busted. But it's only once it goes completely off the scales in Commander that this card is crazy. So I've seen people play Ristic Study in their decks, mostly as a meme, mostly as like a, hey, can you believe Ristic Study's in this format? Isn't that crazy? I've seen people try to use multiple copies of this. Maybe they play like a Familiars deck, so they're able to get this thing down for a single mana. And if you get multiple copies down, okay, now you are taxing your opponent into a pretty disadvantageous situation. Okay, but that requires a lot of setup. And my biggest argument would be Pauper is the format. Hey guys, Pauper is the format where you can play with common cards, so they're cheap and easy to get, and it's not a huge deal. And Ristic Study is the poster child of this. This shouldn't be in the format. Not that it needs to be banned. Again, it's not that good of a card in 1v1 Magic, in Pauper especially, to matter. It's fine. It's fine in the format. It doesn't break anything, but it kind of just goes against the spirit of the format being common cards that are, accessible to you. This card is not accessible to you. Its cheapest version is like $60. That sucks. Like I kind of wish this card was never made for all the implications that it has. But even if it was made, I wish it was just made in a Commander set. So then we could just say, yep, that's a Commander card. Don't even worry about it. But the fact that we even have to talk about it in 1v1 Magic is, a little disappointing. I don't love Ristic Study. I don't think I've made that clear. So now I have, I guess. But for Pauper, again, you really have to think this is not a particularly useful card in the Pauper format, outside of just annoying your opponent or trying to style on them. And while I think both of those things can be fun, they're not necessarily winning you the game. So I will give Ristic Study a very reluctant 3. Yeah. Ugh. Ristic Study. Get out of here. What do we got next? It's Courageous Goblin. We've definitely done this card, and semi-recently, I think. So we'll go ahead and skip that one and see what our next card is. River Wheel Aerialists, 5 and a blue. We might have done this one too, but if we did, it was a very long time ago. 5 and a blue for a 4/5 Jin Monk with flying and prowess. It's fine. 6 mana for a 4/5 flyer. Not amazing. This is a blue creature. Blue creatures tend to be a little bit worse than other colors creatures. But it does have the prowess, which is a little bit nice. Potentially gets even bigger. But there are a couple problems here. And my main one, I've mentioned this before, when you're paying 6 mana for a creature with prowess, that means you're putting it out on the table much later in the game. And when you're putting it on the table later in the game, you tend to not have as many cards in your hand. You know, you can even get to a point where maybe this is the last card in your hand that you cast. How many prowess triggers are you getting at that point? Now, you are in blue. Blue draws all sorts of cards. I know. There's all sorts of ways to get cards in blue. But still, you know, we the cards with that are 1 and 2 mana that have prowess. You understand. You have a bunch of cards in your hand. You can play cards to get more cards. You're getting those prowess triggers all over the place. When you're later in the game, those prowess triggers are fewer and farther between. And when that happens, I think it really loses a lot of its value. So I can get why somebody might be excited at a 4/5 flying with prowess. I think practically this card just doesn't do as much as it might promise. So I will give this thing a 2.3. And I think that might even be a touch high, personally. Exquisite Huntmaster, 3 and a black for a 4/2 elf warrior. When this creature dies, you create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. It also has Encore. So for 4 and a black, exile this card from your graveyard. For each opponent, create a token copy that attacks that opponent. If this turn, if able, they gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. This is only from Commander Legends, and you can understand why. This is meant for Commander. Encore is just a Commander ability. You know, having copies for each opponent. Well, when you have 3 opponents, that's pretty good because you're getting 3 4/2s, and then you're making 3 1/1s, and you're just getting all sorts of value off of this. Even if none of this is actually all that powerful in Commander, it's still okay. But when you're in Pauper, you're getting 1. You get one more copy of this guy, and that's it. Then you're getting the 1/1 elf. It's just not as good. It's not a very good deal. You're paying 5 mana for that is bad. You shouldn't do it. I guess this triggers some things that you could do. Like yeah, it triggers like the lore hold abilities from Strixhaven, but now you're having to play Mardu to be able to make something like this work. It's not worth it. Don't do it. Just don't do it. It's as easy as that. This is a Commander card that's not even very good in Commander. I would venture to guess. So I will give this thing a. It's still a 4 mana 4/2 that leaves a 1/1 and has a little bit of extra value later in the game. Okay. I'll give it a 2.3, but. Fear of the Dark, 4 and a black for a 5/5 enchantment creature Nightmare. When this creature attacks, if defending player controls no Glimmer creatures, it gains Menace and Death Touch until end of turn. Okay. There aren't a whole lot of Glimmers in the format. I can promise you that, because Glimmers were only a creature type added in Duskmourn, so it's not like we've been able to bring in a whole lot of Glimmers into the game. I would say the playable Glimmers are going to all be higher rarities for the most part, so you don't really see them there. There are some Glimmer tokens that show up occasionally, and the cards that make Glimmer tokens, they're not really played in the format either. So you are getting a pretty consistently 5/5 Death Touch Menace guy every turn. Like, you just have it. 5 mana for a 5/5 Death Touch and Menace? It's pretty decent rate, honestly. But you do have to play the game. Is this better than Gurmag Angler? This doesn't have Menace, doesn't have Death Touch. It is a 5/5, and with the Delve, you can delve it down to a single mana. And I would rather pay 1 mana for a 5/5 than 5 mana for a 5/5 with Death Touch and Menace. And most people agree. If you have a way of generating a decent amount of mana, maybe this could be a Tron target in a weird Tron deck. I bet you could do something cool with enchantments and Tron, and I bet there's something there. This could be a pretty solid card if you do end up playing it. So I kind of want to give it a decent score. But yeah, it's tough. It's also when this thing attacks and it only lasts until end of turn, so it's never going to block with Death Touch, and that's I guess that's something you have to consider as well. This thing is really only good, well, not only good. It is a 5/5. It blocks a lot of stuff if it needs to, but it's at its best when it's attacking. So I don't know. I'll still give this a 3.5. I'll bump it up even higher than that. Let's go 3.7. I like it, but I don't love it. Iron Bully, 3 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature golem with menace. And when this creature enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Yeah, I mean, this goes into Boros Bully, right? It's right in the name. Bully. That's not what it's about? Well, I'm hearing, sorry, I'm getting, no, I'm hearing that that's not what that is. Oh, okay, never mind. This card's bad. This card's bad. Now, if you'll indulge me a little non-Pauper talk, I know we've already done that a little bit with Ristic Study, but sometimes you like talking about stuff. I have considered that, and one time it was in this deck, but I have a commander deck of Marchesa the Black Rose, and she loves to have 1/1 counters on creatures of mine. So Iron Bully made a lot of sense. Also, it was like or it is. I still have the deck. It's a deck that uses modified creatures from Mirrodin block that come into play with 1/1 counters, and then when they die, they put their 1/1 counters onto other artifact creatures. So it is cycling the 1/1 counters. That's pretty cool. But she does have Dethrone, so she can give herself +1/+1 counters. But sometimes it's nice to just have a card that can give a thing a 1/1 counter. And so, hey, this is a guy that can give something a 1/1 counter. And the problem with it, and the reason it got thrown out of the deck, is that 1, this is 3 mana for this. That's just too much mana. And 2, yeah, it can put the 1/1 counter on something else. But then if this dies, it didn't have the 1/1 counter on it. So now it's like, okay, well, now I have to put the 1/1 counter on it. So it's a 3 mana 2/2 with menace, which isn't very good. And sure, now it can come back on the loop with Marchesa, but it's not really doing anything. And so I cut it from the deck. There's just better options. There's a whole bunch of ways to get +1/+1 counters on your creatures. There are ways of getting +1/+1 counters on all your creatures. And so I wouldn't play Iron Bully. This is a pretty bad card. It is a golem, though. I like golems. But this one, for playing purposes, not good. And in Pauper, I would say even worse. Pretty terrible in Pauper. Let's go for a... I really do think this is a liability in your deck. I think even if this was 2 mana, it would still not be very good. It would be better than a Grizzly Bear at this point. At that point, but at this point, I'm going to give it a 1.9. I really don't like it. Break Ties, 2 and a white for an instant. Choose one. Either destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. And it has Reinforce 1 for a single white mana, which means you pay a single white mana, discard this card, and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it really has 4 modes. And the last one, you could say that with the Reinforce, it's uncounterable. The rest of these are counterable, but because you discard that, that's interesting. It's 3 mana, so you're paying more than your disenchant effect to get a disenchant, but it does a little bit more than disenchant. It's tough. It's tough to say, right? 3 mana is so much mana for this kind of effect. How much versatility do you have to have on a card to pay a whole extra mana for your naturalize, for your disenchant? And we've seen green push their naturalize effects into the stratosphere, basically. Like, look at all these things 2 mana green instants can do. And I don't think white has quite lived up to that same amount of variety in its disenchant / naturalize effects. And that's a little sad. This is a very nice suite of abilities. Artifact and enchantment, classic. Exiling target card from a graveyard, really good against so many graveyard-based decks. You take the Lotleth Giant before they can get it. You take the Sneaky Snacker before they can get it out. You know, plenty of things that you can do with that. You don't mind that at all. Do you mind paying 3 mana for it? Probably. And then having this other mode of just, I don't know, for 1 mana you can put a 1/1 counter on a guy. Okay. You can do that at instant speed too. That's pretty cool. But it's too much. It just costs too much. It hurts me to say, but it does cost too much. I'll go for a 2.4. If it was excuse me, if it was 2 mana, I think we'd really have something here. But at 3 mana, not quite. Hyena Pack, 2 and double red for a 3/4 Hyena. That's all it does. Yeah. Pretty bad. Better than a Hill Giant. Not by much. But better than a Hill Giant. That's about as good as I can say. I mean, I like hyenas. I think the art's cool. I guess I can say more nice things about it. But overall, this is a. I really don't like Hill Giants. Let's go for a 1.9, I guess. Floodwaters, 4 and double blue for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands. And it also has cycling for 2, which means you can discard it and draw a card. You like cycling on a card like this to give it a little bit more value in the late and mid game, or the early and mid game. This is obviously a late game card, being 6 mana. For that 6 mana, you're returning 2 creatures to their owner's hands. I mean, I guess that's okay, but it's at sorcery speed, so you're not even really getting the value of that. And Pauper is a format where bouncing creatures to your opponent's hand is usually leading to worse outcomes for you. You know, in something like Standard, maybe you can make the argument that bouncing your opponent's creatures is a little bit better. Commander, maybe you can, like bouncing their commander to their hand or bouncing tokens can be kind of interesting. But think about Pauper. This is the set that has a ton of creatures with enters the battlefield triggers, and every format does at this point too. But I think Pauper especially is about a bunch of little creatures that give you value when they come into play, some that give you value when they leave play, some that give you value on cast. Like, what are you gonna cast this on their Writhing Chrysalis and let them recast Writhing Chrysalis and get 2 more spawns? Are you going to cast this on their Wretched Griff and let them draw another card with the cast trigger? Are you going to bounce back their why can't I remember the name of that that golem that has the cascade? Fine, we'll go with a different one. Annoyed Altasaur. Are you going to bounce back their Annoyed Altasaur to their hand just so they can get another cascade trigger or discover trigger? That's a cascade. Are you going to bounce a Novice Inspector or a Thraben Inspector back to their hand just so they can play it next turn for 1 mana and get another clue token? Like, think about all the things. Core Skyfishers, Glinthawks, so many things that just do stuff when creatures enter the battlefield, and you're paying 6 mana to kind of give them 2 more shots at getting insane value. And I really don't like that. Maelstrom Colossus, Jesus, that's what that golem's called. Paying 6 mana at sorcery speed to bounce 2 of your opponent's creatures back to their hands, I think it's just asking for trouble. I think the cycling is the best / only part of the card that I would care about, and for that, I can play a billion other cards that have cycling on them. I think this card is actively bad for you, and I'm going to give it a score that shows how actively bad it is. And I think this is like a 1.4 at best. Really, really bad card. Was that our last official one? It was. So we will do a bonus card, round out the week, and then we'll see you next week. But we'll end with Simian Brawler, 3 and a green for a 3/3 Ape Warrior. You can discard a land card, and this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. From Cold Snap, I have some nostalgia for Cold Snap. I was like, do I like Cold Snap? Do I miss Cold Snap? No, I don't think any of those words are right. Simian Brawler's not great. 4-mana 3/3 is already a little underrate. No evasion to speak of. Discarding only land cards is a little bit rough. So it's very specific. And you might want those lands for the next things that you do. Yeah, I think this is a bad card. I think this is a pretty bad card. You know, there's probably something you can do with putting in specific land cards to your graveyard. Maybe things that you can get back by discarding them. I'm sure there's things, but I don't think this is the card you play to do it. I think you can discard those cards in a myriad of other ways that you would do instead. So, Simian Brawler, I think you're just pretty bad. I'm going to give you a 1.5, and we'll call that a week. Thanks for joining me on this one. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.